So at some point, 80% of all Americans have Googled their symptoms. That means 80% of individuals in America at some point have been concerned enough to essentially go to Dr. Google and try to figure out what's going on with them. Now, when someone is struggling with health anxiety, this really goes to an extreme. It really affects quality of life. When someone's struggling with health anxiety, it's a little bit unique. It's almost getting hit on two fronts. On the one front, anxiety mimics certain symptoms that make it feel like you have some sort of malignant disease. What I mean by that is if you have anxiety, your palpitations can literally mimic certain heart diseases that can convince you that you actually have something wrong with your heart. Or you may be experiencing dizziness, nausea, vertigo, feelings of unreality that actually are the exact same symptoms that you would see with someone struggling with a neurological disorder. So on one end, you're really struggling with all these symptoms that are quite honestly quite frightening. And on the other hand, you're also quite sensitive. Because you're under fight or flight response, your body is kind of very narrowed and trying to figure out a solution. So any small change in your body, you're quite sensitive to. Now compound that with the fact that when you're anxious, naturally you're going to think the worst case scenario. See, you have to understand when you're struggling with anxiety, when you have anxiety, anxiety's job is to look at all the options, pick the option that's the most intense or the worst case scenario and make it seem like that's the most likely. There's survival advantages to that. There's an advantage 100,000 years ago, a million years ago, to think of the worst case scenario, because then you could prepare for it. And the chance of you preparing means the chance of you surviving is higher. So really what I want to talk about in this video is what's the common pattern if you're struggling with health anxiety, some tips and tricks, some things to avoid, and more importantly, what to really focus on, how to overcome this issue once and for all. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Sean. I struggled with anxiety and panic attacks years ago, managed to fully overcome it, and now I help others do the same. So in this video, I'm gonna bring you the truth. This isn't some watered down mainstream stuff. We're focused on the truth, so pay attention. Now, imagine if you're struggling with, let's say, a headache. Okay, and this headache is due to anxiety, and because it's due to anxiety, it's a little bit different than what, a typical headache experience. It's there for maybe a little bit longer. Now, imagine you go to a doctor and you say, hey, look, I have this headache. I'm just trying to figure this out. I want this to go away. Can that's why I'm here. And your doctor essentially runs a few tests and takes a look at it and essentially says, Sean, it's nothing, I don't really see anything. You're probably just fine. Just go home, and get some rest, and it should go away. Now, you do go home and you do try to rest, but it doesn't go away. And you're still kind of on edge about the headache. You're still a little bit concerned. You're like, I've never had a headache that's lasted this long. So then the natural default response a lot of people have who are struggling with anxiety is they end up Googling their symptoms. And when they end up Googling their symptoms, they would see two different websites. So one website shows that due to high stress, it's very possible to have a headache and that it's often related to anxiety. And on another website, it says if a headache lasts longer than a few weeks or something like that, it could be a sign of some terrible illness or some neurological disorder or yada, yada, yada. Which one are you going to believe? Chances are you're probably going to believe the worst case one. You're going to believe the one that convinces you that you have some neurological condition. And then you read on this and then you look at the only way to really diagnose it is to get an MRI. Now you go back to your doctor and say, look, I still have this headache. I really want an MRI done. And your doctor's kind of looking at you kind of like, okay, if you really want, I don't think there's going to be anything, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. Now you get the MRI, comes back, and now it's fully clear. And now you're still trying to figure out, like, why am I feeling this way? Why is it that I'm having these symptoms and yet MRI isn't even showing it? Well, you know what? Doctors don't know anything. They just don't. I'm just going to figure this out on my own. I'm just going to read up on it or join some forums and see who else has struggled with it and just try to figure out what to do and if someone else has found relief, maybe I could find it. So you start joining anxiety forums or you start joining certain groups that have the same issue. And what happens is that once you join these groups, you find people who are struggling with the same thing, except they've been struggling longer or they've been struggling more intensely. And now you're just kind of in this cycle where you've been trying to figure things out and anxiety just kind of consumes you and you just keep getting worse. This is the typical process of someone who struggles with health anxiety deals with. I know this because I struggled with it so much myself. I probably put in tens of thousands of dollars in unnecessarily medical tests trying to figure out what was going on. And turns out the doctors were always right. It ended up just being anxiety. So the main focus really, the major pitfalls to really avoid when it comes to dealing with health anxiety and really focusing on becoming free. And when I mean free, that doesn't mean that you just learn to live with these symptoms. Yes, you essentially learn to live with the symptoms to a certain degree, but eventually the symptoms end up dissipating on its own. And that's what recovery looks like. First thing to do is to really stop Googling. You know, there's this famous phrase that goes something like, half knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge at all. And that's really true, especially when it comes to health anxiety. A lot of times we can go on Google and we could find almost anything out there and convince ourselves that we have that certain kind of illness. So when it comes to health anxiety, Googling needs to stop. It's one of the worst things. It kind of keeps people going into a cycle. And it's not just people with anxiety. I mean, there's people who don't struggle with anxiety who know Googling is just not the way. The only thing you're trying to do right now is you're really trying to find answers to why you're feeling that way. And you're desperate enough to go on Google. So really what the focus should be on is not trying to Google and learn for yourself. The most important thing is to get everything ruled out by your doctor, to get a clean bill of health. Now the second thing to really focus on is learning the mechanics of anxiety and panic attacks. Most often, a lot of people don't really know how anxiety and panic attacks work. They don't understand how anxiety can cause physiological responses, many of which they're experiencing at that moment. So if you understand the mechanics of how anxiety works, you also understand how anxiety affects your certain thoughts and why it's easy to convince yourself that you have certain illnesses, that demystifies a lot of your symptoms, and you don't try to focus on trying to figure things out. So first thing, get ruled out by your doctor. Second thing, stop Googling. Third thing, understand the mechanics of anxiety. Now the fourth thing is find somebody, some sort of confidant or somebody out there who has struggled with it, who has overcome it, or somebody who's just been good at overcoming these things, helping others overcome, and really have them take you under their wing. It's really important. The chances are that if you're struggling with health anxiety, you've probably developed some bad habits that has kind of kept the anxiety cycle alive. The other thing is that if you're struggling with health anxiety, you've really lost confidence in your body. You have to understand, when you have health anxiety, you're not fearful of going to certain places. You're fearful of what's going to happen to you if you go to these places. So you've really lost confidence in your body. So having somebody show you step by step how to fully overcome helps you kind of build momentum, and it focuses on having you focus on recovering, getting better, and then once you get to a certain stage, you can just focus on getting to full recovery. Now you may be trying to understand, okay, Sean, that makes sense, I get that, but how do I overcome this? Like, how do I get out of this? I get it, all these things I shouldn't do, but what should I do to get better? So what I'll do is I'll put a link down below and I'll show you the steps, the exact steps that I use to fully overcome, and these are the exact same steps that I use for my clients. Before, I never really shared these steps with people. I was a little bit protective about it. And I wasn't protective because I wanted to hide the secret or anything like that. But I understood that just sharing these tips isn't necessarily always enough. Sometimes you have to be guided by somebody. You really have to focus on having somebody kind of show you exactly step by step and kind of course correct you anytime you make a mistake. Again, chances are there've probably been some bad habits that have kind of accumulated over time. So just getting these steps doesn't ensure recovery. You really have to practice and really focusing on executing each step. When you focus on executing each step, that's how recovery looks like. So I'll put the link down below. So hopefully this gave you guys some knowledge. Hopefully this gave you some clarity. Hopefully this gave you some understanding. Now, if you want to know more, if you want to ask me more questions or really understand, I have a private Facebook group down below. I'll put the link down below. In this private Facebook group, it's unlike any other Facebook group out there. These are people that are actually recovering. These are people that have actually been getting results, doing better, and focusing on long-term freedom, not some short-term comfort. This is a group where I'm posting daily, and I'm posting exclusive content that's not on any other social media platform. If you want to hit that link down below, when you hit down that link, it's going to ask you 3 questions. Now, it's very, very, very important that you answer those 3 questions to the best of your ability. We want as many people in the group, but we're also trying to maintain the integrity of the group. We don't want this to be just another forum where people who are dealing with anxiety only go to this forum when they have high anxiety and scare the rest of the group. These are people that are proactively focusing on recovery. So hit that link down below, answer those 3 questions to the best of your ability, and I'll see you inside. Last thing I want to mention, these videos are great, okay? They're very helpful. I'm sure they've even maybe brought you some comfort. They may have brought you some assurance. But it's very important that as useful as these videos are, these aren't the cure to anxiety. This isn't the way to overcome. Overcoming anxiety isn't a passive experience where you just watch some videos and you get better. Recovery from anxiety is an active experience. You really have to focus on continuing to live your life and doing these right steps. Recovery doesn't come from watching a video or reading a book or getting a quick tip. So one of the things I really want you to avoid is don't just be a dabbler. Don't be somebody who's just looking at these videos and says, okay, that makes sense, and then goes back to Google, goes back to a forum. Focus on ultimate freedom and focus on getting your freedom back. Focus on getting your life back, because one of the things that we don't have is time. Time is the most valuable resource we have. It's the most limited resource out there. And you really shouldn't be wasting any more time on anxiety. You should be focusing your time on things that matter to you, friends, family, your job, things that you enjoy, things that bring you joy, not things like anxiety. So anyways, hope you found this video very useful. If you did, hit the subscribe button. Put your comments down below if you have any more questions or anything like that. I read every single comment, and oftentimes I actually respond to all the comments as well. So anyways, hope you had a great time. Thanks for watching.